Awesome. All right, we should now be live. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Reva, and I'm the director of the Thermo Fisher Scientific Junior Innovators Challenge. And I'm so glad that you could be here today. If you're here, that means that you've earned a nomination to compete in the competition this year, which is no small feat. So you should be really, really proud of yourselves for all the hard work that you've put into your project so far. And it's really great that you're now taking the next step by opening up an application, or hopefully you will be opening up an application very soon after this webinar. So this is our second webinar in for nominees in this application cycle. And in just a bit, we're going to be hearing from some very special guests who are here with us today, who will tell you all about their experience as alumni of the competition and share their tips about that completing the application and what their experience was like as finalists at the Thermo Fisher JIC last year in 2024. So we are so, so grateful that they could be here with us today. And it's always a really great webinar that we have to hear from them and just get their advice being in your shoes just a year ago. So I'm also here with my colleague Alex, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Grace. I'm the specialist for the Thermo Fisher Scientific Junior Innovators Challenge, here to support all of your questions you're asking to get through the application. And I'm very excited to have you all joining us here today to hear from our wonderful alumni.
Yes, thank you, Alex. All right, so like I said, today we're going to talk with our alumni in just a bit. But before we chat, we wanted to take a few minutes to go over some of the basics of the competition and things you might need to know as you start working on your application. So, thank you, Alex, for sharing screens. We just have a couple slides to talk through. So if you don't know anything about the competition and this is your first time hearing about it and you have no idea what it means to be a nominee, the Thermo Fisher JIC is a program of the Society for Science, which is the organization that Alex and I work for. It is a nonprofit dedicated to the public engagement of in the scientific community, and we run three competitions. The Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, which is the world's largest international pre-collegiate fair for high school students. Excuse me. The Regeneron Science Talent Search, which is the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and math competition for high school seniors. And of course, the Thermo Fisher JIC.
All right, so here's a little walkthrough of what it means to be part of Thermo Fisher JIC. So Thermo Fisher JIC is the premier national science fair-based competition for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. To qualify to enter Thermo Fisher JIC, a student must place within the top 10% in a society-affiliated science fair. Nominees then complete our online application, which many of you have started, and we hope lots of you will start soon if you haven't already, by the June deadline, which is June 11th. And ultimately, 30 finalists will have the opportunity to spend a week in DC showcasing their research projects and competing as teams in hands-on STEM activities. We have several recorded webinars to walk you through the application process and answer your questions. You can find recordings of these in the resources tab, and your SurveyMonkey apply count are on our YouTube page, where you also have where you are right now watching this webinar.
Awesome. So just I'm going to cover a few basic important information that you'll need to know if you aren't aware already. So first and foremost, of course, our application deadline is June 11th this year at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll then have the summer where our evaluators and judges review all of the applications. There's no other step once you complete the application to make it to the top 300 or the top 30 finalists, just what you put in your application. Those top 300 are going to be announced on September 3rd, and the finalists will be announced on September 17th this year. An important thing that you'll need to open your application or to really complete it and see all of the tasks is your fair password. So this is something that you should have received if you were nominated from a fair. Your fair director hopefully emailed you. If not, never fear. You can email us at jic@societyforscience.org and we will help you out. We will send you your password or fix it for you on the SurveyMonkey Apply site if you entered it in incorrectly, so you can access the full application. And then one thing that we just want to clarify, because we always get asked, each team member of a team project needs to submit their own application. So we know that you obviously worked on your science fair project together and that a lot of um, you might answer questions similarly, but you should try to answer in your own words as much as possible. The application looks at more asks questions that are more than just about your project. So that's why you have to submit it individually. There's some creative essays and there's some questions about you and your experience with STEM. So it's important that each member of a team open their own application. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet our alumni. So again, we're so glad that they could join us here today and share their words of wisdom to this year's class of nominees. Again, these finalists were in your exact same shoes last year, working really hard on their application before that June deadline. So they are the best people to get words of advice from as you continue working on your application. They'll also talk about their time as finalists, so you know a little bit more about what that experience is like. Um, and if you haven't already, I definitely recommend also going on our YouTube page or on YouTube on the Society's page and watching the highlights video. You can see all of them in action and exactly what they did last year. And that's really the best way to kind of get an idea for what finals week is like. So without further ado, let's have everyone introduce themselves. I'll call on folks, but if you can say your name, where you're from, and your grade. Same, but why don't you start? You're in my top right.
Hi, my name is Samit Mahadevin. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I'm currently in eighth grade.
Thank you. Sophia
Hi, my name is Sophia Jong, and I'm in eighth grade, and I am from Salt Lake City, Utah.
and Sophie.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm from Palo Alto, California, and I'm currently in ninth grade.
And last but not least, excuse me, Leif.
Hello, I'm Leif Spear, and I'm from a small town in Indiana called Terre Haute, and I'm currently in eighth grade.
Awesome. Thank you all. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Why should students apply to the National Middle School competition, and what motivated you to apply? We'll start with Sophie. Can you answer that for us?
Yeah, so I think this started out like with my school because they were always very like encouraging of their students to like pursue their science projects. And what motivated me to apply last year, it's because first of all, this is such like a fantastic experience to like show your work, practice talking about your project, and basically to be able to showcase like the great work that you all have been doing this year. So that's kind of what motivated me to apply last year, and that's what I think would motivate a lot of other people.
Thanks, Sophie. Sophia, how about you? Why should students apply, and what motivated you?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sophie. I mean, you've already reached this level and you've earned yourself a great honor to be among like the top 10% of middle schoolers in your state, right? That is amazing. And it's a really great opportunity to showcase your work at the national stage. And it's also a great opportunity to reflect on your research process and learn more about yourself as well. And for me, each time when I was nominated to participate in a science fair of like a higher level, I was able to get my research to reach a bigger audience and receive more pertinent feedback and criticism and mingle with and learn from other researchers. So I think it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sophia. I think that's totally agree. That reflection piece is something that is so helpful, I think, if you want to continue on research, if you want to do it in high school, just to think about, what you did over the year and it also kind of prompts you to think about, okay, where can I go from here? So even if you are just entering the application, it's a great chance to stretch those thinking muscles. I think Alex is gonna answer or ask the next question.
Yes. All right, this is for everybody. So I want everybody to answer this one. Some students might be debating whether or not to apply and maybe haven't seen themselves as scientists or engineers before. What's your own STEM story? How did you become interested in STEM? And what words of advice do you have for students who might be feeling some imposter syndrome? Why didn't we start with Leif?
Sure. So, my both my parents were professors, and one of them is an environmental professor. So I've always been interested in the field of environmental science for as long as I can remember, pretty much. And I became an environmental activist and wanted to do something with science that could contribute to the solving of this huge issue. So that's how I got started in science fairs with help from my school. So I really kind of started doing science in earnest to work on my passion, which is addressing the climate crisis. Um, and as for students who are feeling imposter syndrome, I would say that we need as many scientists as we can possibly get. So science is a field for everybody, and don't ever feel left out from science. We need all the help we can get.
Thank you, Leif. All right, Sophie, go ahead.
Yeah, so kind of similar to Leif. When I was like younger, both of my parents and then like my school that I went to, and essentially like the environment I was around kind of immersed me into science, which is why I've been able to like develop my own passion for it throughout the years. And that's also how I started my science fair, because having this own project, this small passion project that I was able to work on throughout the years is just really like important and great for me. And for imposter syndrome, I really get that because I've been feeling that for the past couple years, and I understand it's a very real thing for a lot of people to experience. And I say addressing it comes in very slow steps, but soon you'll be able to realize that the work you do and the ideas that you're able to bring to the table, nobody else can take that away. And then you guys are all amazing thinkers. So I think learning to accept that fact, it does come slowly, and everyone else does take a different journey, but I think throughout the science fair, you will be able to learn, like Sophia said, you'll be able to reflect on your process and the work that been able to done. And someday you'll realize that, it's really amazing. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Sambit, go ahead.
So I would say that the JIC is a really unique and amazing competition because any project in any domain and field of science has a chance at getting selected. And so even in like my personal experience at going to the finals week, I saw a variety of projects from fields like forestry, space research, or in my case, allergen detection. And so if you're confused on how to start your application or you don't have a big background in STEM before, I found it very helpful in my own journey to kind of reflect back on yourself and your personal life and think about the problems that you face. And instead of thinking of these as problems, you can see them as opportunities to kind of utilize the STEM skills and build it up as a project. And you will also feel really passionate and invested in it because it has like a deep personal root to you. And so you can use that as motivation as well. And that can help you like get started on your STEM journey.
Awesome. Sophia?
So yeah, if you haven't seen yourself as like a scientist or an engineer, like don't do that, right? At our age, there are so many possibilities, so don't try to limit yourself. And as for my STEM journey, my elementary school introduced me to science fair in the second grade when the entire class was divided into two groups conducting research on some assigned topic. Then starting in third grade, we were required to conduct scientific research individually for science fair. And the school normally provided us with a packet for some guidance and sample research topics, but I felt like it was not challenging enough to comfortably choose a topic from the packet or do research on something that's already known. So I was driven by curiosity and creativity, and I started researching for more challenging topics and experimenting with new materials and procedures and learning new knowledge. And over the years, I've studied various topics, and this past school year, I studied biodegradable hydrogels. And most importantly, my audience in the science fairs, including my classmates, peer fair participants, and judges, played a role in inspiring me and continuously pursuing scientific research. My audience asked me many questions, played with my apparatus, tried the experience themselves with enthusiasm, and offered me valuable suggestions and feedback. The best compliment I have heard repetitively from my classmates was, "I have been waiting to hear about your research." And being selected as one of the top 30 junior innovators and competing in the finals week made it possible for me to meet the most talented young innovators, scientists, and engineers, as well as STEM scholars and professionals in the country. Each finalist is doing innovative research on important topics. I found them each to be so relatable. They have inspired me to continue pursuing STEM and exploring the unknown. So in science fairs, I have really found my people. And if you're feeling the imposter syndrome, don't doubt your work. You've already made it this far. Be proud and confident in your work.
Thanks so much, Sophia. Thank you all. Those were some really great pieces of advice, and I think it's so important um, for younger students and this year's applicants to hear about how each of you got involved in STEM and how there are so many different paths you can take. So there's not one right way. So don't, to echo everyone else's statements, you don't have to feel like what if I didn't do this or I didn't do that? There's no straight path to achieving in STEM and being successful. And like Sophia said, you all have already shown that you have that passion, you have that curiosity that will take you to the next level. And so there's nothing to lose by opening an application and just trying. So, all right, moving on to our next question. The longest part of the application is part three, all about your project. So we want to know how long the project information part of the application took you and what tips you might have for entrants to help them manage their time to complete this part. So let's start with Sambit.
So the project information section of the application, it took me about a week and I was working like several hours each day. So it is definitely like a time consuming part of it. And there are like many questions, but I think it's definitely like achievable since you're already so well versed in your research. And it's just another opportunity to portray all that you've learned through your project. And one tip that I have, which is pretty important, is that there are many pages to the applications and there are like questions on further pages, which you cannot see until you like complete the previous page. So I would like recommend firstly pasting all your questions into a document and answering them there. And then you also need to like keep moving through the different pages. And even if you're not ready to like fully submit it, you can just like click submit on that page and it allows you to come back and edit it later anytime before the deadline. And so that'll help you like keep on track and like manage your time better like through the application so that you don't miss out on those like final pages. Yeah.
Yes, that is a great word of advice. Always scroll down to the bottom to see if there is a next page button. It's only on a couple of the tasks, but it is on task part three, which is your project information. So that is a big one that you don't want to miss. In the application, you can also see at the top of the page a little progress bar. So once you save something, it'll tell you if you're 50% of the way there or 100% of the way there. So that is another good indication to make sure you're not forgetting that there is a second page in that task. And yes, you could always work on your application after you submit. So we like to tell our piece of advice is once you're like 90% of the way there, you're just working on kind of proofreading and fine tweaking. You finished all the parts, just go ahead and submit it. There's no harm in doing that. That way you know that we have your entry and that your application is logged and you can always continue editing. We have a video that tells you exactly how to do that in SurveyMonkey Apply. You just need to make sure you're hitting that save button if you make edits, but you are able to edit that up until the deadline. So great tip. Leif, do you want to also share your tips or your experiences with part three?
Sure. So, yeah, it definitely took me a while to do it, probably about the same amount of time as Sandvith. I spent a few hours on it each day over the course of 1 or 2 weeks. And so, yeah, it definitely is a very daunting thing with all a very daunting form with all the questions. Definitely breaking it down into chunks is very helpful, breaking it down into manageable chunks. I'm pretty busy, and I'm pretty sure most of the people who are doing this are very busy as well. So, breaking it down into small, manageable chunks and remembering that you don't need to get it all done at once is very important to doing it.
Yeah, awesome. Sophie or Sophia, any other words of advice to share?
I mean, yeah, I agree with both Sambit and Leif, but like generally just get to know what's expected in the application and create a plan or a timeline to complete your application. And if you've already written a report for your project, your life would be much, much easier. For part three, you can just pull out information from your report since you've already discussed the research question, hypothesis, research designs, data results, etc. And yeah, I mean, if you have a report, it's gonna be your life is gonna be much easier. So
That's a good point, Sophia. And or, most probably 99% of you would have also done like a digital project presentation or a project board, a poster board at your science fair. Those sections, whatever you've typed up for that or written out for that can also be used in the application. A piece of advice that we like to share as well is, you all have competed at your local fairs, and so your judges would have asked you some questions and you might have more experience kind of talking aloud about your projects. So that's a great way to start. You can always kind of just record yourself answering the questions out loud, and that might help you to start putting some words down on paper if you listen back to that recording. And I really like Sambit's other piece of advice as well to kind of to use like a Word document or Google Docs or something as well to add in or to save your responses. That way you can kind of look at word limits. You have a copy of it, so that's great. Go ahead, Sophie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on one last tip. I feel like with the part three of the application, it's basically you walking the judges through your project and eventually maybe the public through your project. So I feel like one really important thing that I said before, I think, is to like keep it very simple with your project because I understand this because last year, there are a lot of parts of my project that involved some math things that weren't easily explainable. And if I did, I would have to like basically write long paragraphs in order to get people to try to explain it and to like try to understand it. And sometimes I feel like you do not have to make sure everyone understands every single aspect of your project. I think like simple writing and easy words that get them to understand maybe the gist and the importance of it is sometimes a better thing to have in your application. So just a tip for there.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Thanks, Sophie.
Awesome. All right. So in the application, we have some creative and personal essays. We know sometimes students get stuck on these. How did you approach this section? What did you do to get your ideas flowing? Let's see, Sophie, let's take it away on that one.
Yeah, so with the personal essays, I honestly did struggle a bit because even though you have all of these hobbies and passions that you might want to write about, it's still a bit hard sometimes to like put it into words. And for me, what I did last time is I kind of just blotted out all of my ideas. I wrote them down on a piece of paper, my first instinct for any of these questions. And then I worked on revising it slowly later. And I know that refining your writing is a long process, but that's why I feel like this application was really good for me in the long term too, because it helped me work on my personal essay writing skills. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody else want to pitch into that one?
yeah, so for me, I did a lot of research on the problem solving question. And I like to interview adults and professionals and investigate the problem directly with along with some secondhand resources to get the information I need. And for the personal essay, I just answer the question genuinely and discuss my interest in science and engineering genuinely.
Samuel, do you want to share a note on this one as well? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people can find this part like especially intimidating because some of these questions you might not be able to like get the answer directly at first. And so like to help get your ideas flowing, as Sophie said, it's really helpful to like just jot down all of the ideas that you have. And like an important thing is to like not limit yourself here and like not care about whether the ideas are like good or bad or like whether the word choice is good. Just try to get like all of the ideas on paper, and then later you can come back and select the ideas that you like the best and like kind of adapt the writing to make it sound better. But I think like just like doing a quick brainstorm like that can really help get a lot of good ideas, and then you can narrow it down later.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Thank you all. We're going to keep going with our questions, and Leif, you're going to be answering this next one for us. The one thing I also want to just quickly mention about the personal essays, and particularly the solve a problem, we ask that question knowing that not everyone is going to be an expert in the topic, right? It's open-ended in that way. And what the judges really want to see is how you might approach a problem that you don't know a lot about. So don't worry about picking the like best answer or best solution. your best bet is to really kind of talk through how you would approach that problem, talk through your solution process. So while it can be daunting because you don't know a lot about it, that's okay. That's the point. But definitely, take everyone's advice here. Do talk to some people that helps. Do a little bit of research, but don't get stuck on it. Don't worry about spending a lot of time doing that. You're just write organize your thoughts and then go ahead and start writing. All right, so this next question is going to be for Leif, and it's about the visual aid, which is another part of the application that sometimes people don't know how to approach. So we know people can get stuck kind of choosing the best graphs and visuals and data to represent their project without filling in, every bit of white space. That's what we don't want folks to do. Um, so, Leif, what was important to you to include in your visual aid? And what advice do you have about how to fill that out for folks?
Yeah. So I think first of all, the saying goes, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's very helpful in science to have a aid to help. You can point to that and say, you can help use that to explain. So I think Sophie was saying before how when she was in using her project or explaining her project, she had a lot of different pieces that were very bulky, kind of difficult to explain. And I kind of used this visual aid to explain some of the things in a more visual manner that would be hard to explain otherwise. So I had a lot of like statistical analyses that would be very difficult and very wordy to type out. But being able to put a visual aid there to help explain this was very helpful in I think uh, being able to communicate my project to the judges and to the people who are reviewing my application.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Leif. Sophie, do you have any other piece of advice to share, knowing that you also have kind of some math going on in your project?
So for my project personally, one really good piece of advice that I received is that, of course, you guys want to pick like the best like graphs that show like that tie most to your conclusion or your results. But one piece of like more abstract advice that I received is that your board is supposed to represent a type of journey. And it's supposed to like visualize that journey so even a random stranger would be able to understand your thought process. For example, how did you go from this research to this hypothesis? How did you design your experiment based off of your research? What do these results show? How did your results flow to your conclusion? So it's a bit abstract, but I think your board is supposed to represent a journey of sorts. So people can kind of see your thought process and see how your data and your results led to your conclusion. And for me personally, like Leif said, I had like a bunch of like mathematics and like model creation that was really hard to explain in words. So what I did, I put a bunch of images, some graphs, and some equations, which were a lot easier for people to perceive and to read. And then hopefully, like in the finals week, I was able to just use my words to explain it instead of just putting a big chunky paragraph.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice there. We're going to go to same with for the next question, but my final thoughts on the visual aid. I like what you said, Sophie, about it kind of telling a story. And remember that, the judges and evaluators are going to be looking at your whole application. They're going to be reading through everything. So you don't need to worry about writing a lot in that visual aid. We actually don't want you to write a lot, but you should use those visuals to tell your story, right? If you have something important in your methodology that you want to include, you can go ahead and you talk about that first or show, your procedures or data in that sense, and then talk about your conclusions and your findings. So just remember that, they're going to be looking at this side by side with your application. So you don't need to worry about including everything from your application, but really just highlight those important graphs, data, analysis that you want the evaluators and judges to see.
Say one more thing before I pass it on. Seeing a bunch of questions about the visual aid. In general, you want to keep it to about 3 to 4 graphics. The idea is that if you were to print it out on a piece of printer paper, that you could read it clearly, because that's what the evaluators and the judges are going to see. If you upload your project board, you wouldn't be able to read it if it was that tiny on a single piece of printer paper. So keep it to 3 to 4-ish. That's what we recommend. Images on the visual aid. Again, if you could print it out and you could read it clearly, that's what you want. And I will go on to the next question just for sake of time. Sorry about that, folks.
We'll come back if y'all want to add some final thoughts to everything. Don't worry.
Exactly. All right. For Sambith, what was your biggest takeaway from Thermo Fisher JIC? What were you positively surprised by?
So I think like going into the finals week, I was like really nervous because I thought the environment would be like super competitive and that was kind of like stressing me out. But like immediately when I got there, I saw that like all of the kids that were there had come in with like a really like friendly mindset and there was like a great sense of like camaraderie. And then like we immediately like formed a bond and like through all of the activities that we were doing and the team challenges, it was all very teamwork focused. And so that like built a good sense of community. And so it really like put me at ease and made the experience like really enjoyable in general. And it was super positive because it like broke the expectations that I have of it being super competitive.
Thanks, Savith. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that pretty much all of our alumni come away saying that they didn't even feel by the end of it like they were at a competition. It was just a really um, informative, fun experience to meet other students just like them from across the country. Sophia, do you want to take a stab at this question as well?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sambith. It was a great opportunity to get to know everyone, and I was positively surprised that the other JIC finalists were so relatable and so friendly. I realized that Thermo Fisher JIC is not just a competition, but it's also communication and friendship. And I'm sure all my friends here can relate. And we connected so well, and it felt like we've known each other for years.
Yeah, that's, excuse me. It's always awesome to hear about just those relationships that are formed in such a small amount of time and that y'all continue to kind of stay in touch and keep up with each other even beyond finals week. So we always enjoy hearing about that as staff ourselves. All right, so this next question is going to be for everyone. We know that you're very busy with schoolwork and extracurricular activities and hobbies. So what are some tips that you have for managing your time and your mental health for students now who are doing the application, on top of everything else? I think, Leif, you kind of alluded to that earlier, so we can start with you.
Sure. So, there's a great quote that says every time that you accept every time that you accept something to do, you have to give up another thing. So every time you have to do something, you also have to give up another thing that you could be doing at the same time. And that's very important and a very important thing to take through life in general. So I would my advice would be to take each thing day by day, kind of slowly, and definitely focus about what you're most passionate about and what brings you the most joy, because that's going to be what's going to help you in the future, and definitely what's going to help the world in the future, probably. Remember that you can't focus on everything, so you have to focus on what you enjoy doing and what you deem to be most important.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Sophie, why don't you go next?
So I know with this, it requires a lot of like time management, and I think Leif already covered like a lot of that, like how to manage your time well and ensure that you're spending time on the right places. But I'd also like to address like two problems actually that I personally struggled with. And the first would be burnout. And I know that even if you have a lot of passion for your project and if you have like a lot of passion for your research topic, it's still very okay and very normal to feel burnt out even after working on your application for like weeks or months and like constantly revising. I got tired a lot of the time. And sometimes I was like, is this normal? Like, I'm supposed to love my project. Is feeling tired and not wanting to like finish this, is that normal? And yes, it is. Like, being tired of something doesn't mean you don't have passion for it. It's just perfectly normal to feel tired sometimes. And I think an really important thing is sometimes you can just let it all drop and take a step back, because that's kind of how you let your passion reignite. And second, I think is well, me personally, one of the problems I have with time management is being distracted by outside factors. For example, my phone or like talking with my friends. And while working on the application, since I was juggling so many things on my schedule all at once, it became very easy for me to get distracted by other things. And to that, I feel like one of the best pieces of advice that I received is that if you're distracted, it's okay to go ahead and take a 5, 10, 15-minute break. It's okay to step aside from your project because like you since you have like the passion, you'll be able to like return. And it's much better to have like maybe like an hour of uninterrupted work than stay at your project working for 6 hours, but you're distracted and constantly going on your phone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally does. And it's advice that even I can use. So totally agree, Sophie. And yeah, I think it's important to recognize that, sometimes you might not feel like you have the energy to do something, and that's okay. Just take a break, come back. It doesn't mean that, you're not, that you shouldn't complete the application or you're, not good enough to complete the application. We know that it takes some time, takes some effort. So like everyone has said, manage your time. But you all have already done so much hard work. You've made it to the top 10% across the country. So know that you have what it takes to keep going. Sophia, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I totally agree with everyone here. And I mean, don't stress about it too much, right? Again, you've already reached this level, so be proud of yourself and just showcase what you've done in your application. Take a deep breath, take a break if you need it, and do what you need to do to come back with like a clean slate, right? And I mean, just do what you love. When you do something that you really love, as Sophie said, you never get truly tired or bored because you love it so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Sophia. And last but not least, Samvit.
I think it's like really important to prioritize your task when you're taking on something as like large as the JIC application and also trying to balance it with all of the other hobbies and extracurriculars that you have going on. But like you might start to like feel that there's a lack of motivation because of how many things that you have on hand. And especially for the JIC application, it can get like long and arduous. And so it's important to realize that like JIC is 100% worth it. Like the skills that you gain through the different stages and it's just like a road of opportunity. And like even after it's over, it like brings on a lifetime of like science and STEM experience. And so you're really fortunate to have like made it this far. And you really, as Sophia said, you have what it takes. And now it's time to like seize the chance.
Yeah, that's a great great last words there on that question. Thank you, Samvit. And just by entering, I want to remind everyone that you will be welcomed into the Society for Science alumni community. So just by completing that application by the deadline, you are considered one of our alumni. You get to join our alumni network. You'll hear about, all of the different opportunities that we offer for our alumni. You learn more about our competitions for high schoolers. So yeah, the opportunities are endless, and again, does not hurt at all to try. You're not going to lose anything. You also get a free t-shirt in the mail over the summer, so that's something to look forward to. All right. Any last pieces of advice that y'all want to share? This is an open for all. So whoever wants to start, just go ahead and unmute. I think I saw Sophie's hand first.
So I'd like to give two main pieces of advice. And the first thing is that I think one of the best things you can do for yourself for this application is kind of treating it not really as a competition, but as a learning process, as a lot of people said. Because, of course, like being able to make it to the top or to finals week may be like, it's a fantastic thing, but sometimes it shouldn't be your only priority. And I know this like firsthand experience because I did this twice. And in my first year, essentially my main goal, I was so blindsided by, my want to make it to finals week that I don't think I really took the time with the process or the application that I actually needed. And it's really like strange because it's like funny how like much a mindset can change the way your experience is. Because in my second year in eighth grade, I kind of took a step back. And even though I did the exact same application, very similar questions, this time I took the time to think, how does this impact my project? What does this mean? What does my project mean to me as a whole? And being able to like consider all of that and being able to work on my writing skills and focus really on the process is one of the best things that I could have done for myself. So here it's kind of like treating this more as a learning process and not focusing just on the winning is essentially one of the best things you can do for yourself. And second, bullet points are probably your best friend on the visual, on the like the visual like aid. For like a lot of the data and a lot of the conclusion, just bullet points are really useful.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself there. Love all of that, Sophie. Yes. And definitely we don't want to see big paragraphs and sentences in that visual aid. So short, sweet, little captions are great. Samvit, go ahead.
So the first thing I'd like to do is like give some encouragement. And the thing is that I'd like to like shout out all of like the Society for Science and like JSC staff members. Since like as you're applying, you know that you're like they're gonna like take care of you and they're always like there to help throughout the whole process. And so if you're feeling like nervous or confused about anything, like they make each step of the process like so clear. And then even if you can always reach out to them if you're still confused, and then they will always like provide good feedback and advice. And another thing is that like for the visual aid, I found that in my experience, it was like only 2 pages, like printer size. And so it's like limited space. And you really like need to use visuals and like show statistics efficiently so that people can get the gist of your project without like reading too many words and they can really see it as a glance. So you can kind of think of it as like a pitch for your project and you're trying to make it look as like marketable and eye-catching as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you, Samvit. We hope that folks reach out to us with questions. We are always answering them. You probably have already gotten emails from Alex and myself. But yes, please utilize that inbox. We are here to help. Leif, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things to remember is that your work is really important. I said kind of earlier that there's always room in the science community for more scientists. And one of the things that I was most surprised by and most pleased by when I went to finals week was the passion of everybody there about science. Um, it's really impressive that people are doing this work, that people our age are doing this work. And I was really happy when I got to finals week to see so many people with the same passion for science as I had. Um, and I just want to tell people to keep doing science because, again, I think every problem in the world will probably be solved with science to some extent.
Yes, definitely agreed. And Sophia, last but not least.
Yeah, I mean, all of my friends have taken the words out of my mouth. But like, just be confident and proud of what you've done in your research so far, right? And be authentic in your communication of your motivations, interests, and experiences. And as Sophie said, this is a learning process, so treat it as one. I mean, the journey is the most important part. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck in completing the application and have lots of fun.
Yes, thank you so much. It is a fun process. We want folks to have fun with it. It's a chance to just talk about your wonderful research that you all are so excited and passionate about, and talk about yourselves, talk about your stories. The judges and evaluators are just really curious and interested to get to know you all through the application. So definitely have fun with it. That's a great last word of advice, Sophia. All right, we're gonna take a look at the chat, and Alex, I think, has been answering some questions and taking a look already. So maybe um, we can start there and see what questions we have. There's gonna be a mix of questions for us, and then also some questions for alumni. So um, we'll start looking at the chat.
There are a bunch of questions about what should be on the visual aid. I know we talked about it a little bit. Maybe if you wanted to add some
Yeah,
details for the screen.
sure. Yeah. So like everyone said, I know the visual aid is always something that we get a lot of questions about. Um, I think. I think the advice that you've gotten here from our alumni is great. It's up to you to decide what you want to include about in your visual aid. You want to think about what's the best representation of your project. We recommend 3 to 4 visuals per page. It's not a hard and fast rule. If you have more or less, it's not going to count against you or for you in any way. So know that. But those recommendations are there just to give you kind of guidelines if you're struggling with thinking about what to include. The big no's are listed in the rules. You should not be including any links to external pages or resources about your project. Um, you want to blur any photographs of people. I can't remember them all off the top of my head right now, but our rules in the instructions of the visual aid task detail all of those specifically. Sophia, go ahead.
So yeah, the graphs and the visuals in your visual aid aren't always the prettiest or the best looking graphs and visuals. However, they should be the most relevant and important graphs and visuals supporting your presentation of your research. And this was personally a challenge for me since I had so many tables and figures and photos. So I just chose the most representative visual aids. I also edited them a little bit so that they could fit well into the 2 pages.
Yeah, definitely. So, Sophie, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just as a small side note, in the finals like competition week when I looked at everyone's visual aids, it all looked like it had like the same main content, but everyone's looked pretty different. Like you don't have like a set format. So I think it just depends on what you think is the best representation of your project. If yours is maybe results based or data based, maybe put that. If yours is application based or like conclusions based, maybe focus on that. But there's no like set structure that you have to follow to. Kind of just go with what you think is the best representation of your project.
Yeah, absolutely. And take a look at your project boards and start there, right? You already have some visuals that were there. You might have more than what's going to fit in the visual aid. So, like Sophia said, think about what you want to trim down. But you have kind of all the tools already, and this is just putting it in a digital kind of format. Alex, any other questions coming through?
Yes, a big one we have is talking about what changes can be made between nomination and submitting your project.
Yes.
So what
I will
you?
take this one for sure. Yes. So we know that it's sometimes confusing for folks, but you should be entering the competition, filling out the application with the same project that earned you the nomination at your local fair. So what this means is um, the research question, the hypothesis, the engineering design criteria, all of that should say the same from doing your project, competing at your local fair to entering the application. You can always add more data if you'd like. So say, you were measuring plant growth and using a particular type of soil. If you want, and you did trials that lasted a week at a time. If you want to use the same soil, the same plants, no variables change, but you're just doing the same exact trial, collecting more data, you can add that to your application. If you were to change the soil, if you were to change the plant type, if you were to change any other variables that could affect the growth, that's what you should not be including in your application. You can talk about that in the future directions question in part 3, but you want to be entering the same project that earned you the nomination at your local fair in the application. We will continue to answer that question. I know we get a lot of that. If you want to email us more specifics about your application and your project, you can always do that. We're going to put up our email at the very end of this presentation as well. Any other questions coming through?
Getting some about team projects. So if you are a member of a team, you need each member of a team to submit their own application. We ask you to write that in your own words. So instead of copying and pasting sort of make some of the writing from maybe your poster into the application, we understand there's going to be quite a bit of overlap. You obviously worked on a project together, but want you to write that in your own words. And also, you are welcome to apply without your teammate if they're either not eligible or don't want to apply. That is perfectly fine. Just indicate that it is a team project and still give us their name because it's helpful for us to know. But you're welcome to apply without your teammate and you're not penalized at all for applying without your teammate.
Yes, for sure. Great points to have. We'll do one more question for our alumni. So we know that research can sometimes be tough and you might make mistakes. And I think it's always just helpful to kind of hear from others that are, their experience making mistakes and what you learn from it, to know that you're not alone. So what mistakes did you all make during your research process or the application, and what did you learn from it? Anyone can go ahead and unmute and answer. Go ahead, Sandra.
So like during the initial like stages of my project, when I was just trying to like get a proof of concept that it was like feasible, then like when I was testing it out, I found that like the accuracy of like my ML algorithms, it was really low. And this was like super discouraging because it was like so early in my project and I started to get like self-doubt about whether this would even work or whether it was like worth pursuing. And I think that like here at this type of like crossroads, it's important like not to lose your motivation and you should like reflect back on like the passion that you have for your project that like spurred you on this journey initially. And you should like use that to like push you forward. And I like did this myself and I like tried many different things, such as like varying the training data samples and then like changing the parameters of my algorithm. And like it was a lot of trial and error and it didn't work for a long time. But then eventually once I got it, I could use that experience as like kind of to build off of in later stages of my project. And it felt very gratifying to get that success and it kept me going throughout the project.
All right, Leif, do you want to answer next?
Sure. So, I definitely made a lot of mistakes in my project. I think that making those mistakes is very important, not only to the project itself, but also learning about the scientific process and learning about different questions that you can have with your project. Because I myself found that when I made mistakes, it made me really dig deeper and think harder about my project and the issue at hand. So I think it definitely built problem solving skills, that's for sure. Um, Another thing that I found is that my project was it was the first of its kind, but there had been others like it. So I basically created a climatic reconstruction. It was the first in its region, but there have been other climate reconstructions using the same proxy. And I found that when I made mistakes, it was very helpful to go and look at these research papers from actual scientists to see if they had made the same mistake and to see what they had then done to fix it, since I found that a lot of the mistakes that I had made were similar to those that actual researchers had made. So that was very helpful to me.
Yeah, that's great. It's always great to see how you can learn from others that have been in your shoes. And everyone does make mistakes, even researchers who have been doing their work for years and years. So definitely helpful to just know that and talk about it. We have one question that I actually want to ask y'all and kind of expand upon that we got in the chat about, did you meet any influential people or hear about companies during your time in Finalist Week? And we really haven't talked about all of the kind of other stuff that y'all did besides from judging. So why don't you share a little bit about that, Sophia? You can start.
I mean, in terms of influential people, I would say all the people there were very influential. I mean, even my fellow finalists have had a great impact on my life. My judges, they were super nice, they were super welcome, and I just felt very comfortable around these people. And it was like it's just like a community of science-loving people, right? So, everyone there was very influential. I mean, I don't think I can name specific companies that were there, but I just think everyone there was just so important.
Yeah, for sure. And wouldn't expect you to necessarily remember either. But just I think hearing about what all you do at Finals Week with beyond, talking about your research project, is really helpful to hear. Anyone else want to talk about it? You can talk about the evening activities, meeting alumni, talking with Thermo Fisher. Go ahead, Leif.
Yeah, so at one point, they brought in two alumni who had competed in the competition. And I believe one of them, they said, had gotten to the Regeneron at the high school level and won a high award for that. And the other one had done internships at NASA. And so both of those people were very, I think, influential. They were very, it was interesting to hear how they had taken their lives and what they had done with this research and this passion for science that they had. Another aspect that I found very influential was when we went to visit the NASA headquarters and we got to listen to some of the presentations there. That was amazing. And specifically for me doing work in environmental science, going to the environmental science or the Earth Space Observatory at NASA, and listening to the head of operations there was a very interesting experience for me and a very different view from how I normally see this field of research. So that was very great experience for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, we have time for just one more, so Sophie, you can give a quick answer.
Yeah, so similar to what Sophia and Leif said, like there were a lot of influential people there who are very successful in their fields. But I think one of the things that I was very pleasantly surprised by is that it wasn't, it's that like the way they talked and the way they interacted with every single one of the finalists just made it very obvious how much these scientists or these people care about like the next generation of like scientists and innovators. And I think that was just really reassuring to see that, we're like we're in good hands with them. So
Yeah, that's awesome. They are just super curious to learn about y'all. They have so much fun. Our judges, our alumni, our friends at Thermo Fisher Scientific who are there and obviously as our sponsors for the competition. Just really everyone loves to hear from y'all as finalists and get to know you a little bit better during the week. So uh, glad to hear that you felt that way as well. All right, so thank you all so much. We are just at about time. I do want to give a shout out because I saw some questions about, future webinars. We do have a couple more coming up this application cycle. So definitely we will email everyone more information about those as they come. We're going to do a webinar with a couple more alumni and talking about, just even more information about why you should compete. You'll learn a little bit more about finals week. We'll talk about the team challenges, which we didn't even get to at all. But we wanted to focus on the application for this time around. But there's a whole lot to look forward to if you apply, if you're interested in making it all the way to finals week. So we will do that, and we'll have another final kind of FAQ webinar before the deadline as well to answer any burning questions that folks have. As always, you can email us at jic@societyforscience.org. If we didn't get to your question in the chat, you can email us and we will respond to you there. But again, you all have what it takes to continue and make it far in this competition. We really hope that you go ahead, continue working on that application or open it if you haven't already, see what's in store, and hope that you take the chance to apply. I've said it probably 100 times already this webinar, but you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So yes, we hope you become our alumni, just like these wonderful folks that you all met today. So thank you all so much once again. Really, really appreciate your time. And thank you all for watching and hope you tune in to the next one. Take care, all.
All right, the stream is ended.